many microphones now. He got too many microphones. Hey everybody, it's me. It's your pandemic professor, Scott Velasco, coming to you from the Corona Court, the COVID Castle, our secluded bunker on the west bank of the Halifax River. And in case you couldn't tell from the odd assortment of ephemera that we have laid out before us here, our very special topic today is the microphones. Well, let's head over to PowerPoint. All right, so the first mic we're going to talk about is called the moving coil or dynamic microphone. And I've got an example right here. This is our moving coil and dynamic microphone today. The moving coil microphone operates on a pretty simple principle, electromagnetism. So how does that work? Well, if you look at our slide here, you can see this is sort of a C-shaped magnet. And what is floating between that C-shaped magnet is a tightly wound coil of metal. Now, the reason that matters to us is because metal attracts magnetism. You know this already. And to put that coil between the two poles of the magnet will naturally generate an alternating current of electricity. So here's the thing you have to remember, right? When you were a kid sitting at the breakfast table, you'd get two refrigerator magnets. And if you held them in just the right position, you could feel them repel one another. And you sort of sat there and you'd play with them and think, what wizardry is this? And then if you flipped one of them over, they'd smack together and they would attract one another. And that is an important thing to understand. There's a force between the two poles of a magnet. So what a dynamic microphone does is it suspends between the north and south pole this tightly wound coil of metal. And that tightly wound coil of metal is attached to the diaphragm. So let's move the cursor over here. You see this shape here. That is the diaphragm. It's this very thin, impossibly light plane that will vibrate back and forth based on the incoming sound wave. Now, we've already talked about diaphragms a little bit, right? When we were talking about phonographs and gramophones and all of those things, we said that there was a diaphragm that would move back and forth to scratch the groove. Well, this doesn't have a groove. Instead, the microphone is acting as a transducer. A transducer converts energy from one form to another, and in the case of the microphone, it's converting the acoustic energy, those actual fluctuations in the pressure of the air, into an alternating current signal. And that's important to us because electricity is how we carry an audio signal until it gets converted into digital for computer recording. So, if we go back and we look at this dynamic microphone, what you will see is as the sound pressure hits the diaphragm flutters back and forth, right? And the diaphragm is fluttering back and forth at the same rate as the incoming sound wave. So if I whistle a 1 kilohertz tone, that 1 kilohertz tone is going to hit the diaphragm of the microphone and make that diaphragm flutter back and forth 1,000 times every second. And as it flutters back and forth, it's moving that coil of metal between the poles of the magnet 1,000 times a second, and those fluctuations are outputting through the microphone an alternating current of electricity at 1 kilohertz. So when we talk about analog recording, this is what we're talking about. The electricity is serving as an analog, a stand-in for the acoustic sound wave, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it, right? And the way it's doing that in this particular case is by moving that tightly wound coil of metal between the poles of the magnet. And the example that I have brought with me today is this microphone right here, manufactured by the Shure company. That's Shure. This microphone is called the SM57. You don't have to memorize it right now, but it sure isn't a bad idea. Ooh, didn't mean to make that ridiculous pun. It's not a bad idea. This microphone has been around as long as most of us have. It is $100. It was $100 the day I was born. It will be $100 the day I die. I don't know how they figured out how to avoid inflation, but the SM57 is not only one of the least expensive professional microphones, but also has the following characteristics. It is rugged. It can handle abuse, and this is characteristic of a lot of dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones are able to handle stranger and more nefarious situations than most microphones can. When you go to a club, there is a very good likelihood that the singer of the band you are there to see is singing into something similar to this. Actually, I've got another mic. Stand by. Actually, they're probably singing into this microphone right here. And this is called the Shure SM58. And if you're wondering, the only real difference between these mics is this pop filter here, this windscreen that goes over the head of the microphone. Now, the SM57 that I have situated over here right now, I bought when I was in high school, I think, and I have used it honestly at some point on almost every recording session I have ever been involved with. These things live forever. So $100 investment now, not bad for the life you're going to get out of it. Now, there are other more expensive dynamic microphones, plenty of them in fact. Dynamic microphones are one of the most popular styles of microphone because they're inexpensive to manufacture and very durable. In fact, if we go to PowerPoint here, we've got another example. This is manufactured by a company called Sennheiser, and it is called the 421. It has a few features that the SM57 does not. For instance, it has a bass roll-off control. We might call that a filter, right? A high-pass filter, because everything above a certain frequency passes through the microphone, and everything below that certain frequency is cut. However, not all microphones will have a filter. That is a feature that you're paying extra for. All right, and so that gets us through the dynamic microphone, the first of the 3 microphone types that we plan to cover. Tune in next time when we discuss this, the ribbon microphone, another magnetic induction mic. Until then, it's time to bounce. This is me, your pandemic professor, Scott Velasco, fading out.
It was a Tuesday afternoon. He put his hand on the doorknob. He began to turn. Oh, Velasco. He came to the door. It was a Tuesday